Enterprise architects in April 2026 face a definitive choice. When building their foundational agentic mesh, they have to decide between two distinct technological frameworks, Agno or the Claude Agent SDK. The industry consensus recommends a hybrid approach, an Agno control plane acting as the overarching orchestrator, containing smaller Claude SDK agents for specific tasks. But this integration introduces structural friction. Architects find themselves navigating data sovereignty concerns, protocol-level context loss, and mounting maintenance debt. Successful deployment requires mapping your internal engineering capacity against your organization's specific compliance requirements. We will map both frameworks against different levels of operational maturity so you can deploy an architecture your team can actually maintain in production. Blindly adopting the industry standard hybrid recommendation without assessing your internal engineering capacity is a dangerous trap. It can consume your entire engineering runway before you ever reach scale. Relying exclusively on Agno's Agent OS provides immediate velocity. You get rapid, out-of-the-box deployment of a full 8-pillar mesh, instant observability dashboards, and the flexibility to route tasks across 50 different models from 23 providers. The trade-off for that speed is execution security. Agno relies entirely on standard Python runtime execution environments. If a prompt injection attack successfully tricks an agent into invoking a destructive tool, Agno has no OS-level sandbox to contain the damage. The Claude SDK evaluates tool requests through a 5-step permission hierarchy inside an OS-level sandbox, providing compliance-grade security. However, as an alpha library, it lacks a registry, agent-to-agent protocols, and a control plane. Developers must build these infrastructure pillars from scratch. Agno gives you a fully built vehicle that lacks heavy armor. The Claude SDK gives you an indestructible engine, but you have to weld the chassis yourself. In theory, combining the two frameworks gives you the best of both worlds. You secure Agno's mesh routing with the Claude SDK's sandbox isolation. This creates a data sovereignty paradox. Agno processing stays inside your VPC, but Claude SDK agents route prompts outside to Anthropic's public cloud, violating strict finance and healthcare data rules. To mitigate this, architects must explicitly route calls through AWS Bedrock or Azure, keeping processing within controlled cloud boundaries. The hybrid architecture is not inherently private by design. It requires explicit architectural intervention from day one to remain legally compliant. To connect these systems, the standard method wraps the Claude SDK agent as a model context protocol tool, allowing Agno to call it. But Agno treats MCP tools as stateless functions, causing a complete loss of session memory and file context on every call. The 200,000 token window simply resets. The alternative is agent-to-agent, or A2A, peer orchestration, successfully preserving context across the boundary. Because the Claude SDK lacks native A2A support, engineering teams must build and maintain custom bridge endpoints to make this work. The scaling challenges extend to event-driven architectures, specifically when integrating Agno with Apache Kafka for enterprise message queuing. Traditional message queues assume deterministic behavior, but large language models are inherently non-deterministic. They may generate different reasoning paths if a message is replayed. This creates the LLM Kafka idempotency problem. If an agent fails and a message is replayed, it might take different actions, duplicating real-world effects like executing multiple financial transactions. Preventing these duplicate actions requires your team to build custom deduplication and state management logic before the agent invocation layer. Agno does not handle this natively. You also have to consider observability. Agno provides turnkey dashboards out of the box. The Claude SDK relies entirely on native OpenTelemetry protocol streams. While Claude's telemetry correlates perfectly with mature enterprise SIEM tools like Datadog, it provides very little value to startups that don't have pre-existing observability infrastructure. Achieving the hybrid ideal requires a permanent engineering investment solely to maintain the integration seam, handle asynchronous deduplication, and unify your observability pipelines. The hybrid mesh is a luxury enterprise architecture, not a default starting point for every team. We use an organizational maturity matrix to map architecture choices cascading downward from team size to compliance posture. For small teams and startups with 1 to 10 developers, avoid attempting the hybrid model. The operational complexity will exceed your capacity. You have two distinct options. Use Agno only for speed and multimodal flexibility, or choose Claude SDK only if you are building deep, highly regulated compliance tools. For mid-market teams of 10 to 50 developers, use Agno as the core. You can afford to incorporate Claude SDK agents for specific high-risk tasks using a limited, stateless MCP integration. For enterprise platform teams with more than 50 developers, you have the resources to proceed with the full hybrid model, but this requires strict prerequisites. You must route through AWS Bedrock for data sovereignty, build custom A-to-A bridges to preserve stateful context, and dedicate full-time headcount just to maintain the integration seam. Engineering leaders must base their procurement decisions on the operational reality their team can actually survive, rather than which code works best in theory.